I tend to think of God as possessing the attribute of simplicity. I don't know as I have a good reason for supposing God to be simple, but I do think that he is. By simple, I mean that God is not composed of parts. For example, there is no true distinction between God's mercy and God's justice if he is simple. To say that God is simple to say that God is really merciful and really just would be to divide God up into two different parts, a just part and a merciful part. So God is simple, I think, not just in the sense of lacking physical parts, arms, legs, and eyes and ears, and so on, but also of lacking what might be called attributive parts. So if I am right, then God is not just per se or merciful per se. Instead, he is justice merciful or merciful justice. That is, his justice is essentially merciful and his mercy is essentially just. You can't divide his mercy from his justice. But if we suppose that God is simple, then it is hard to think about him or talk about him as he really is. It is hard, perhaps impossible, to think about all attributes of God as one super attribute. We can be merciful, or we can be just, or we can be some amalgamation of the two. But for us, mercy and justice are really distinct. Not so for God if he is simple. So we speak of God's mercy and God's justice as though they were two totally different things. But while we do that, we stage whisper, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to quote Monty Python. Many theists, however, deny the simplicity of God, I think. So this attribute is controversial and not universally held by all theists. Still, I think many of the theists who deny divine simplicity would hold at least to the epistemological simplicity of God. By this attribute, epistemological simplicity, ES for short, I mean the view that God does not have many different thoughts, but instead he has one super thought. If God has ES, then his mind is different from ours, for we divide our thoughts into many different propositions, and we may have other types of knowledge in addition to propositional knowledge as well, experiential knowledge, for example, but all of our knowledge is divided. For God, if he has ES, there is only one object of knowledge, namely all of reality as a whole at once. So then some theists believe that God is simple. All of those theists, and many other theists too, believe God has ES. Excuse me, the attribute of epistemological simplicity. If omniscience is to be understood in terms of ES, then it avoids the arguments against omniscience. At no point, it seems, does the set of all facts come into God's thinking or knowing process. Whether you believe in ES or not, it seems to me that you have to admit that it is at least a logical possibility that is the part of the furniture within the divine mind. If there is a divine mind, the divine mind could be ES. Actual or not, if it is even possible, the arguments against omniscience fail as sound arguments. So this atheistic argument, or pair of arguments, is not sound, the arguments against omniscience. Now I'd like to shift gears a bit from the mind of God and focus on the mind of man, and hone in on the second argument. The second argument, to remind you, is that the set of all facts is logically impossible. It seems prima facie that this argument is sound, but I think there is a problem with it which I'll get to more explicitly a bit later. For now, consider the normal human mind. I am obviously not omniscient, neither are you. However, we each know an infinite amount of facts. I don't know all facts, but I do know an infinite amount of them, and ditto for you. This may seem like a radical claim, but I think you'll agree with me once I explain more precisely what I mean. I know that I am evangelical 1. I know that I know this. I know that I know that I know this, and so on ad infinitum. I also know that I am not fat German bastard. I know that I know this, and so on ad infinitum. So those are two first-order facts, let us say, which imply, in some sense of the term imply, an infinite number of higher-order facts. The base knowledge that I am evangelical 1, that I am not fat German bastard, that's first-order knowledge. The knowledge that I have of the base knowledge is second order, third order, etc., without limit. As normal human beings, then, we know an infinite amount of facts. Collect all of my facts into a set. Now take the power set of that set. Associated with this power set shall be more facts that I know than the original set, which is all the facts that I know. Human knowledge is totally analogous to divine knowledge in this way. I mean, both fall prey to the second argument. Yet we know for a fact that we know what we know. Human knowledge is certainly not impossible, so there has to be something wrong with the second argument somewheres. And it seems to me that the argument fails, the second argument, in how it structures knowledge. There is no need to group all the facts known by a particular knower into a single set. It is better if facts are grouped into sets by order. The first tier is the set of all first-order truths. The second tier is the set of all second-order facts ad infinitum. There is no reason for a knower there's no reason a knower could not think of their thoughts in this way, and it avoids argument 2, so why not give it a twirl? Okay, now notice what's happening in the second proof. As soon as we take a power set, we are leaving the realm of first-order knowledge. We know that truth 1 is or is not in each subset, but this is what we know by implication. We don't know this by first order or base knowledge. So it is not real knowledge in that sense. It's an implication of the real knowledge we have. We are not really adding anything that wasn't already in the original set, the set of all our known facts, or the known facts of the knower. It is just not spelled out in the original set, but it is there implicitly nonetheless. All right, and we'll pick it up there in part 3. Thank you. Shalom.